welcome from whatever part of the world you are in. My name is Abubaker Abdullahi, and it is a delight to be speaking with you today. We're going to be talking about agility as a critical path to building resilient organizations in the African project economy. We're going to be looking at what agility is, why it is an increasingly important part of transformations in the largest organizations in the world. We'll look at what role it will play in helping African organizations chart a course through some of the emerging trends on the continent. And finally, we'll look at how African project managers can leverage knowledge of this to lead their organizations in the age of the project economy. So what is agility? Agility is that trait of an organization that allows it to respond quickly and effectively to threats and opportunities. Sometimes quickly isn't effective, and sometimes effective is too late. But why do organizations really need to respond quickly and effectively? The reason is that we live in an increasingly complex world at the moment. It's a world in which unpredictable. It's a world in which the present is unclear and the future is uncertain. But it's also a world where these uncertainty, as we've seen with COVID-19, for example, has been heightened by the complexity and interconnectedness of different things that then make everything potentially chaotic and confusing. And finally, there's also a lot of lack of clarity or awareness in either the internal environment or the external environment where organizations operate. And these four areas combine to form what is now a popular acronym in the project management space called VUCA, which is interpreted as volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of the world we live in today. So agility is important, right? Because, well, 81% of respondents, for example, across global C-level executives in organizations across the globe were polled about the importance of agility. And 81% say that it is the most important characteristic of successful organizations in the 21st century. This is from a Forbes Insight report in 2019 titled The Elusive Agile Enterprise, conducted in conjunction with Scrum Alliance. And the reasons why agility is important, as highlighted by these executives, is that customer needs are ever changing, that market demands continue to fluctuate, and that changing customer needs and market demands are increasing competitive pressures today, but also that disruptive technologies are accelerating the impact of all these other three areas. And so if this is what is going on across the world, and we live in a VUCA world, why is an African context of a VUCA world important? Well, Africa has its own peculiarities that we need to consider. The first thing is that there's almost general consensus that Africa is the final frontier for rapid growth in the world. The reason is that there are huge gaps that can be filled in Africa because of the gaps that exist in infrastructure, in internet access and penetration, for example, in access to electricity, access to governance and services and things like that. And that filling these gaps provides a huge opportunity for growth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Africa has a young population that is also projected to continue growing. We're likely to see 60% of the continent be younger than 30 within the next decade. And so again, that is a huge opportunity for growth as people who are going into the active populations, active work populations are actually skewed towards youth. And the third thing is that as we see these things happening, that Africa is going to continue being a huge consumption market for the world. And so there's a lot of opportunities for business and business activities on the continent. But all these three things are also going to be impacted by other things that are happening on the continent that we're going to look at now. So one of the things that is happening is that the The signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, for example, seeks to make this huge landmass into the world's largest free market. So we're talking from Cape Town to Cairo, from Dakar to Mogadishu as one huge landmass that is just going to be open to everybody doing business. What this is going to increase is it's going to increase the likelihood of cross-border trade and whether or not these borders will even exist as tariffs get lifted as the trade agreement comes into effect. Of course, it's going to come with its own complexities for regulators across these borders and things like that. But even for businesses operating in Africa, it's going to create different challenges and different opportunities. So we'll likely see reallocation of resources as organizations try to find efficiencies of scale and economies of scale. So companies will likely produce in one market and sell in another. They'll probably have workforce also scrambled across the continent, delivering services in different areas. It's going to deepen the need for specialization in the areas that businesses operate, as also efficiencies will become even more critical. Again, because businesses are going to operate across borders, we're going to see ever-growing multicultural teams. Businesses who, for example, used to operate in Kenya, now looking at the wider West African market or even the South African market as a space to operate means they will have to have employees and are multicultural that serve different things in the different markets across the continent that they serve. And this is going to increase competition and pose a threat for smaller businesses who are not dynamic enough to spot the opportunities or to respond to the threats that are going to come from Continental Free Trade Agreement. So that in itself is going to deepen complexities and increase the need for resilience on the continent. The second thing we're seeing is the influx of capital to African startups. So depending on who you're listening to, between $500 million and $2 billion came into the continent to African startups. The differences in the figures are located to whether you're considering businesses operating in Africa as being African, or if they're headquartered outside the continent, you don't consider them, for example. The age of the businesses and things like that. Regardless of which figure you pick, that's a huge amount of money coming into the continent and causing disruption, rapid innovation, and deepening competition. And the company we're looking at, for example, Okada, is based in Lagos, or launched in Lagos in 2018. And when they came into the market, what they entered with was bike hailing startup that uses motorcycle transportation that you can call your phone and request service, but also delivering services for delivery of packages and groceries and things like that as a tool. Now, what happened was when Okada came in, it met another company which had already came in to disrupt the market, what it wanted to do, called Max. Max was developed, was founded at MIT in 2015 and started operations in Lagos in 2016. It went on to raise about $7 million, while Okada raised about 5.3 million. Another company, OPay, which is a Chinese company that also has interest in payment, came into the market in 2019. That company raised 120 million over 2 rounds, $150 million. But that also went into payments and other areas of interest for that company. So we're looking at about 200 million coming into a particular space of business within a short period of time, disrupting themselves within the market. And they didn't just disrupt themselves, these three companies, even though they became fierce competitors. What they did was they disrupted the existing market in Lagos where they were operating. Because Uber had come earlier to disrupt, of course, normal taxi cabs that we were used to, disrupt motorway buses and the famous motorway buses of Lagos, and also the normal Okadas, which were the motorcycle taxis that people were used to. So within these companies also, they created what then became a headache for regulators. Regulators tried to find how to, again, find balance within these environments. And eventually in the first quarter of 2020, what happened was bike hailing startups were banned. So all the three companies with all the money they raised ended up being out of the market. Within a 4-year period, they came in, disrupted, did everything, were then banned from operations. And so this is what complexity causes and uncertainty causes. And just raising capital isn't enough. Raising capital sometimes creates its own problem on its own. So yeah, innovation, competition, and disruption caused by influx of capital is something that we're going to look at in Africa. The speed of technology adoption, as we've seen again with the other with the companies where money has come in, it is also going to influence Africa. The company we're looking at is Aerobotics. It's a diagnostic tool from Cape Town, launched in Cape Town, South Africa. The company uses drone technology and artificial intelligence to diagnose 3 crops. So think about having hundreds of acres of land or hectares of land that you can actually cover within minutes using their service. And that gives you the speed of diagnosis, but also the ability to isolate poor crops, and that improves the yields, makes you track productivity even better on a farm. Now, imagine you are competing in a market with a company that does this, and because of that, improves the efficiency of the products, the final products they produce from the farm. You go to market competing, and their efficiency in that area alone, even keeping everything stable, can be the reason why you lose out of market share, especially as traditional tariffs disappear as the trade agreement. So again, the speed of technology adoption is not just happening in this area alone in agriculture. We're seeing platform businesses and solutions like this that speed up technology adoption, helping in different areas. Fintech is one that we see disrupting banks and the financial services. And so these things are going to, again, affect the rate at which complexities and uncertainties increase in Africa. Finally, we're going to look at, of course, the changing nature of work. As we all know, more and more work is moving remote, accelerated, for example, by the COVID-19 pandemic. But that's not all that is happening. Even without remote work, people are organizing teams in different ways, using, for example, shared workspaces that reduce the need for physical infrastructure and things like that. And with the use of these kind of things, it means even where talent is scouted for and kind of talent you need, if it's not available in your location, you can find it somewhere else, either within the continent or outside the continent. And that's going to put a bigger strain on even employability and employment in Africa, but also on resource management as more efficiencies are sought by organizations. Again, it's going to be in collaboration, as some of the businesses that look to start operating in different parts of the continent would rather outsource some of those responsibilities to other areas rather than doing it themselves. Again, more multicultural teams would end up working together, and that the need to manage that as project managers is going to increase. Now, as these 4 areas are happening, again, within the 3 areas of Africa's peculiarities that we've looked at, customers in Africa are going to become more specialized and start looking for specific things from the market. So they would expect superior customer experience, for example. They would expect improved product quality. They would expect faster time to market and faster innovation and improved competitiveness. The companies that are agile enough to realize this are going to gain hugely. But those who cannot, again, who are not resilient enough to either take early lead or to adopt strategies that defend them against some of these things that are happening in the market, are going to lose out. And it is a combination of all of this that makes agility a critical part in building resilient organizations in the African project economy. Because the project economy in itself is going to organize more and more work into projects as we move through the next decade and beyond. Now, if we agree that agility is important, how then do organizations pursue agility traditionally? So there are three basic steps. The first step is to create a suit with an agile mindset. That means at the top of the organization, at leadership, you create an agile mindset. Then you hire and develop the right mix of talent, and these are the people who continue to run the organization within. And finally, you foster an agile, friendly culture and organizational structure. Now, it might seem like very straightforward things to do, but when you start isolating each one and looking at it critically, you see how difficult a task is going to be. And that is why agility is actually a tough thing to achieve for most organizations. So the first thing you see is that the C-suite, which is essential, is not often the most flexible group of people you may find. For lots of organizations, the leaders are more stuck in the way the organization does things because they believe that is the best way. And this is not far from the reason why when organizations start to grow or they raise funds or because they become more global, higher level executives and sometimes even the CEO is asked to step down and leave the organization because fresh thinking is essential, the kind of thinking that allows for faster decision making and things like that. So that's the first challenge to build it. The second challenge is in hiring and developing the right mix of talent. Where talent doesn't exist, what do organizations do? And this is why an area where African project managers need to focus their attention in building the right mix of competencies that enable them to fill these roles either within their organizations or in new organizations that will be looking for capabilities like that. What have organizations done, for example, to fill this gap of talent? Well, they've had third-party consultants in some cases. In some cases, they've created incentives to increase agility within the organization. In some cases, they've trained the workforce. And in some cases, they've even developed a specific group responsible for agility within the organization. Each has its benefits, but also provides opportunities and threats to project managers who either take advantage of the opportunity or lose out to the threat. Now, those two are tricky, but even trickier is developing an agile friendly culture and organizational structure. So any student of strategy will tell you that culture is one of the most difficult things to work on in organizations. And agile and agility, for example, demands certain things. For example, it demands a flatter structure that takes away hierarchy, that enables faster decision making and iteration and things like that in arriving at things. So that is still one of the major challenges that you will face. The second thing is that organizational change is not one of the easiest things to implement. And the reasons are many, but two things are critical. The first reason why people resist change in organizations is that they say that they are scared of what the change is because they don't have enough information. The second thing is that they have enough information and they are angry at what the change will mean. So why should people be angry about change? So the first reason why people are angry about change is that they say they are not carried along in the decision process. And the second reason is that they're going to lose out on some of the benefits that they used to have in the business as usual way of doing things. So for example, hierarchical structures give a sense of growth and things like that, or superiority within organizations, and some people would rather maintain that. This is why, again, it is extremely tricky for agility to be achieved by organizations. But there's a way around it. Now, so if we agree that rapid change is coming to Africa, and we agree that agility is going to be critical for organizations to remain resilient and continue to survive in the African project economy. The question is, how can African project managers leverage this knowledge to lead their organization? The first thing project managers must do, of course, is to maintain a continuous learning mindset, a lifelong learning mindset that allows them develop new skills and competencies as they become in demand. This year, 2020, we'll be talking about the power skills, and I'm sure either at the beginning of this conference or before it ends, power skills are going to be discussed at some point. But also, project managers will have to, again, as they look at especially project managers who see PMI as whole, will know that the talent triangle for PMI mentions not just technical skills, but strategic and business skills, as well as leadership skills, as being essential to be project managers of the 21st century. And that, of course, even the talent triangle has now been layered with digital skills just to increase the competencies of project managers. But that's not the end. They will still need to develop a set of toolkits that, as we can see, so first thing they will need to do is to move away a bit from traditional methodologies and develop a personal toolkit, iterative and adaptive techniques and management methodologies that they use. And this is where we start looking at things like Agile, Scrum, continuous improvement, design thinking, Kanban, extreme programming, and all the other adaptive methodologies, management techniques that are available. Of course, this is PMI, so we're talking about disciplined Agile, which in itself has been a smart acquisition by PMI. And I love the four process levels of disciplined Agile that allows you learn from foundational levels of disciplined Agile delivery to even achieving enterprise-wide disciplined agility, whether we're talking about strategic agility or tactical agility at scale. And the thing is, when people talk about iterative and adaptive methodologies, most times you find that people outside the technology, manufacturing sectors think that it is only applicable to those, but it's not. From healthcare, even in healthcare, in governance, in different areas and sectors of the company, whether it's legal, administration, or whatever, agile methodologies help organizations become more resilient. And PDIA, for example, is a technique developed at Harvard, specifically at the Center for International Development, where, of course, people worried about wicked problems in development, from maternal mortality to access to water to treatment for communicable diseases and things like that, are using problem-driven iterative adaptation as a child of agile and lean methodologies through a process called facilitated emergence to solve problems rather than just submit solutions developed from one location to the other. And if you find yourself in one of those fields, I think you should have a look at PDIA. In Nigeria, we already have communities of practice that are implementing PDIA and the community of practice also extends to Africa. And that leads me to the second thing that project managers in Africa can do. We have to join and build communities of practice that are Africa-centric, that look at Africa's peculiarities and are solving them, that shares knowledge within the people actually working on the ground as we move forward into the next decade and beyond. So one of the things I'd like to see, for example, is more collaboration between members of chapters across Africa. There's no reason why someone knowledgeable in a particular area that is critical for agility, for example, who is based in Angola cannot deliver knowledge to members in Nigeria, or someone in Cape Town delivering knowledge to someone in Ghana or something like that. So that kind of collaboration is going to help deepen knowledge, especially as the trade agreement also enables us to liberalize travel restrictions and makes it easier across the continent. Yes, so in building continuous relationships across the continent, of course, we want to see more attendees at PMI conferences. Of course, this is a picture from last year, Dar es Salaam. This year, COVID-19 has didn't allow people to come to meet us in Lagos, but we'll look at how next year proceeds. Hopefully, we'll be back with our friends. Now, besides, of course, developing personal toolkits, building communities of practice, and leveraging continental relationships, also in our reading as project managers on the continent, we need to be a bit more deliberate. And PMI has done excellent work in project management, especially towards linking strategy, design, and implementation, as well as results delivery. One of the things that they have done is the Brightline initiative. If you haven't bookmarked brightline.org, I think you should go ahead and do that after this session. It's an excellent resource that gives you lessons learned from different jurisdictions where people are implementing transformation. Of course, the Brightline Transformation Compass in itself is an excellent tool. And I personally love the 5 components and how they link up in driving transformation. And I think it's an amazing read for everybody who's interested in continuing to practice project management in the next decade and beyond as the project economy becomes more ubiquitous in the world. Of course, in continuing that trend, PMI again launched the Benefits Realization Management Guide in 2019, which I find to be very timely because as more organizations face complexities and threats, also even as opportunities, they want to see greater value realization and benefits realization from the initiatives that they implement. And learning things like the benefits traceability matrix and how benefits are realized across portfolios and programs is only going to increase the competencies of project managers here. So for example, as VP membership at PMI Nigeria chapter, one of the things I realized is that most PMI project managers do not fully utilize their member benefits. The Benefits Realization Management Guide, for example, is a free download for members, and I urge you all to download and have a look. But also look at other standards and guides, especially in the areas of governance and risk management, because these are going to be highly critical in the age of the product economy. So I've been talking for quite a while, and we're now at the end, and I'll just leave you with one question. So if we agree that agility is a critical path to building resilience in Africa, as a project manager on the continent, you see it as an opportunity or a threat? It's a question you can only answer for yourself. Thank you.